Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Ignacio Esteban.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
Hey, Bill. Nice to meet you, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing some of your stories, because it's a
For sure.
different aspect of what I'm used to dealing with,
Okay.
and so it's the other side of it.
Yes. That's good. Gives your audience a nice perspective what we do in law enforcement. So for sure.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell the people where you're from and what it was like growing up for you?
Yeah. I'll give you a little background. I was born in Los Angeles, LA, raised in South Florida, in Miami. Very bilingual. Went to Catholic schools, and I never thought that I would ever get involved in law enforcement, especially being an undercover and doing it for years and kind of cases I did. I thought I was gonna had a background. I had went to Tampa, had a bachelor's degree in political science and history, and then I come back and I was working on my master's in international relations, and I was going to go to law school, right? And I was going to get more in debt, but I decided to give it a go. I always loved law enforcement, and there were some openings with customs in Miami at the time. This is about in the mid '90s, and I was fascinated by the work. I liked what kind of work they did and the seizures and everything else. And Miami at the time was really booming. I mean, back
Yeah.
in the '90s and '80s, that's where a lot of the Colombian cartels were still going strong, right? This was before the Mexicans took over, the Mexican cartels, and a lot of stuff was still coming through the airport and seaport at MIA. So that was pretty interesting to me. I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind putting in for it. They were looking for Spanish speakers who understood Latin American culture because most of the flights coming in at Miami were 80% from Latin America. So you want people who understood the culture. And of course, I grew up in Miami. I have family and friends from all over Latin America. My family is Spanish, great parents, but they went to Cuba and then came over after Castro and the revolution to the United States. So I definitely have that understanding and that background. So I put in for it and I got the job.
How old were
And
you at the
I
time?
was probably early 20s. That was my early 20s.
So you were like gun ho, right?
I was gun ho, man, and it was good to be gun ho because the work was tough. Because first I was in the passenger processing area, which is good. Where you put in your two, and then I got picked up to go to the elite team on the set team, the contraband enforcement team, and that is where you make some of the big seizures when it comes to the drugs coming in from South America. And it is tough work. It is tough work to go through the cargo because you're in muggy, hot conditions, right? You're outside. It could be pouring rain, and you're clearing. This is more labor intensive, but that's how you find and teaches you a lot. This is how you find the big loads coming in, either through the fish, the flowers, concealed, you name it. I mean, sometimes I was part of a seizure that was over 600 pounds of cocaine, right? And the stuff was coming from Ecuador, Guayaquil, and you had these huge groupers, right, in the boxes, and you
Yeah.
had a block of ice next to a block of kilo. Another girl, it was like, wow. And this stuff was going to get ripped off because you had a lot of corruption too. A lot of the ramp workers were dirty, right? So anything that wasn't properly manifested, you knew that stuff was going to go out the door. So that stuff was
Yeah.
going to.
So like people were taking it before the people who own it could come get it, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big
So
problem. We
do you
had a
remember your first seizure, the first time you ever got one?
Yeah. Let me think. I've done so many. I remember some unique ones, but I do remember also a lot of the mules because you're working inside also part of the rover team where these like people, and I feel bad for these people. These were like, peasants, from let's say South America, Colombia that get used by the cartels, right? And they
They
pretty
don't
much
have no
force them.
money.
They
Yeah.
have nothing, man. And they pretty much threaten their family if they don't do it, right?
Yeah.
And they make them swallow these pellets that's full of, these condoms. They're full of either cocaine or heroin, and that's dangerous stuff because one of those break inside you, you're dead. And we had a ton of those, and those were interesting seizures, man. And some people can swallow like 100, 120 of those. That's like 3 or 4 pounds of heroin in your belly and your
I'd be
stomach, right?
so scared. I'd be so scared they're gonna pop and I'm gonna die. Like, have you had people like
Yeah,
getting off the plane like I swallowed a whole bunch, I'm gonna die, get it out of me? Did you ever
yeah,
have anyone like that?
yeah. Or just they die in the plane, they don't make it because they do leak, and once they leak inside you, especially with heroin, it's not good. And then you every call, hey, got somebody dead on the plane again. And where are you from? Oh, they come from Colombia. So you know what happened there. Uh,
Is it even possible to bring somebody back from that if it leaked?
Sometimes you can't be save them long enough. Sometimes it's too late, and then the plane, you think they're sleeping or something, and they're dead. There's been
Yeah,
2-hour flight. And
cocaine, that's strong, like, going through
cocaine's
your
good. Yeah,
bloodstream like that.
and heroin's worse. I think
Yeah,
heroin just does done. You're done. So they kind of you have those cases, and if you don't pass it fast enough, so let's say you do make, we don't catch everybody, right, that comes through, the airport. There's so many that come through. I'm just giving an example here, and at that time, and if you get to the cartel guys, and if you can't pass it fast enough, they got product, they got to move it. So what they're going to do is they'll shoot you in the head and gut you like a fish to take the stuff out of you. So if it get, a lot of times people
yeah,
get stuck, it just doesn't come out easy. You have to take a lot of laxatives, and
yeah,
something, it just still doesn't come out for some people. It just doesn't work out that way. And these guys don't play around.
yeah, they want their stuff,
They want
right?
their
And it's in your stomach, they're gonna find a way to get it out.
just think you got 3 or 4 pounds of heroin inside you. That's what's the street value of that? You're looking quite a
Millions,
bit.
million.
Yeah. So do you think they're going to wait for this guy who they have no respect for, or his family that come from, a campo, from whatever area? So no, that's not going to happen. So those were, I mean, unbelievable cases, unique cases, which I remember that pretty clearly. And then you think of all the other unique. Sometimes women also would have them in their private areas, stuffed in there too.
Yeah.
They put a lot of stuff in there and other places. So people get creative. I remember one time, a couple had their kid have cocaine in their shoes. So it's
Wow.
just they're coming in,
Anything
but
to throw them off, right?
anything. But you're thinking, okay, some individuals, but you wouldn't think a family coming out, but all the factors there, and then of course you have canine and dogs and all that stuff hits. Liquid cocaine, also something that I never thought before I joined customs. You look at a bottle, especially if it come from Haiti or something. Say, why is it so misty inside? And they had it smuggled inside too, so they would drain it later.
What do they
And people,
dry off
yeah,
the
yeah, they dry it off
liquid? They
later.
dry it off and then scrape the
Yeah,
powder. That's
yeah,
pretty
man.
pretty
It
insane.
people get creative. It's crazy. So when I was working with customs, and this was back in the '90s, I was there for about 5 years. You network a lot, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of different agencies. I was dealing with, make seizure all the time: ATF, FBI, DEA, Secret Service, the Marshals, etc. And I started thinking, man, you know what? I wouldn't mind being an agent and taking it to another level, right? Doing these kind of cases, because I'm limited to my border authority, which is pretty cool because everybody's subject to search, right?
Yeah.
But when you're working street cases, you got to develop probable cause. You got to make your investigation so you can present it to the prosecutor. So it's a whole different level. So I said, that'll be pretty neat. I wouldn't mind doing that. So I started putting in for the different spots, and I got picked up by ATF. I put in for DEA and everything else, but ATF picked me up the fastest. And I was fortunate enough not have to go to like the border or Alaska or Montana. They sent me to Tampa, which I spent a lot of time there going to school. I'd like to stay at home in Miami, but hey, Tampa's not bad either. At least I'm in Florida, and I get still not too bad trip. I think it's like 4 hours between Tampa and Miami.
How long was the training from the ATF when you first decided to go into it to where
Yeah,
they put you out in the field? How long was that training?
the academies. Yeah, you have you have two academies. You have the basic academy, and then the ATF one for investigators. It was about over 16 weeks. And I'm at Flutzy, and that's in southeast Georgia, near the city of Brunswick. So that's interesting, and I didn't know that area well too. And I had been there before with customs, so the training is intense. You do a lot of physical stuff, but you also have to learn stuff with firearms, explosives. Like ATF is alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'll be honest with your viewers, it's really the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The B and the E is silent. That was E was added later, and the ATF is really a small A, because they really don't do, after Prohibition was revoked. It's really not that big a thing. We don't do alcohol, tobacco diversion,
But
very
they do
little.
people who are doing bathtub brew in their backyard, they still bust them, right? Like
Maybe
moonshiners. Moonshiners.
moonshiner, but very rare. I haven't seen. I would say more maybe like the state agencies maybe will do those, but it's not like what it used to be. A lot of people don't know. I'll regress here a little bit. That Elliot Ness, from the Untouchables, who ended up getting Al Capone and those guys, he was part of ATF, but then it was called the Bureau of Prohibition. Later, it become ATF with time. So I always found Untouchables and Elliot Ness history. I found it fascinating, and that's what you do need. I'll talk more about that. You need guys who are untouchables to get some of these nasty crime syndicates. Firearms, F for firearms is enormous. That's the bulk of ATF's work. We do a lot of guys who are, repeat violent offenders, gang members, armed drug dealers, international traffickers, domestic traffickers, you name it, we do it. Anything with a gun, we trace the weapons, we help the cases. That's a big thing. And explosives is, I would say, a solid medium E, because we do a lot of cases with explosive pipe bombs, trafficking. So we do a lot of the things you put together. So
because
I found
they
ATF.
take explosive work serious, like because bombs are very rare recently, but didn't the mob used to use them a lot in Cleveland
Yeah.
back in the day?
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, Al Capone. I mean, I wrote a book, Chicago Crime Bosses. They all use explosives to blow up buildings and fires, intimidate people, etc. The one percenters, the biker groups, used to do all the time too. Yeah, it's a big part of creating these pipe bombs or explosive devices to go off, and that's illegal. That's not registered by the
Yeah,
NFA, National Firearms Act. So you can look up to just that alone, possession of that, up to 10 years based on your criminal history. So that's some serious stuff, right? And dangerous, man. Because imagine if you don't know what you're doing, and by accident you screw them
yeah.
the
You
wrong
get a
things,
wire,
and,
the
and you got
wire crossed wrong.
and you see the pictures all the time. People, it has the powder, and you rub it around and it explodes. That's it for you.
One of
So
my friends, when I was a kid,
mm,
they were packing a pipe bomb
mm,
with match heads. It
mm.
blew up, killed one of them, and
Oh wow,
blew off one of their fingers, and but
it's
it
no
killed
joke.
one of them. Yeah, it was
No, it's no
serious.
joke. No joke. Even with fireworks, you got to be careful.
Yeah,
If you see all the injuries, the kids put stuff in their mouth and silly stuff where you're like, what are they thinking? But with pipe bombs, you're packing with powder, flashbang. Ugh, do
it's
not
no
do that at
joke,
home,
man.
please. No, no joke. No, yeah, that's serious stuff. So with ATF, that's what the E stands for with explosives. So I was fortunate enough, got picked up with ATF, and it's not easy to learn, the art or the trade of undercover work, right? I was fortunate enough, the groups I was in Tampa, there were a few undercover agents that did a lot of UC work. So I learned from them how to do undercover. I went to UC school, and I've also spoke Spanish, right? So that helped me a lot because I can do accents, I can speak to people in Spanish. I
So
had
how do they put you in with the group that you're gonna be infiltrating? Like, do they just drop you off on the street and say go into that bar and try to figure it out? Like, how do they?
you know what helps a lot. I have to be honest with you. What will make you or break you is having good informants. Having good informants. You got an informant that's gold. He can introduce you to anybody, right? Hey, this is so
Oh,
and
so
so.
you get introduced by somebody into
That
there.
is the best. Yeah, it's the other way. It's almost very difficult. But you've got people from within that bring you in and vouch for you. That's gold, and that is the way to move up these organizations, or just with anybody. And you're dealing with like I said, gang members and violent offenders and stuff. So I was fortunate enough. Like I said, I spoke Spanish, had good informants also, right? And I started dealing with a lot of these gang groups. And I worked a lot in the Tampa area, up in Pasco County, and then eventually I transferred down to South Florida. But some of the cases we would work, I mean, we would deal with violent home invaders, right? Who are actually looking to do a lick, an armed robbery of a cocaine stash house that's protected by armed drug dealers, right? How crazy is that? I mean, normally I talk to other people, they say, I don't want to do any sort of robbery where I know the guys are armed, right? You want
Yeah,
soft targets, right?
yeah, yeah,
These crews were looking, they didn't care if these guys were armed in there, because they say, hey man, there's 20, 30 keys in there, whatever, I want to do that hit and that lick. But man, it could be a nasty shootout, right? So
yeah.
I would have a lot of meetings with these guys, and we'll meet with them, and and then we would end up at the takedown. Once they're armed and ready, we would have like the SWAT team ready to take these guys down, because they're badasses,
Oh,
right?
so you have them ready to do a robbery on
Yeah,
somebody else, and then you just take them down before they get to do it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
There's a
what
conspiracy
charge would
case.
you charge them with? If just the weapons
It's
or something?
weapons and guns on, but it's a conspiracy case, right? It's like doing a bank robbery, right? Let's say the guys get together, and one of them goes inside. You have a driver, you have a lookout, and you have a guy goes inside to do the robbery, right? He shoots a
Yeah.
security guard and kills security guard. Because of the conspiracy, the driver gets charged with that murder.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot.
That's an overact. See, so the same thing with these conspiracies. They're ready. They're talking about, hey, we got the body bags, we got the weapons. This is how we're going to do it. They've done all the overacts necessary, and boom, they're rock and roll. But these guys are actively doing it. This is not something that they, get tricked into or anything like that. These guys are real deal guys. That's what they do. And you need intro to a crew like that, right? You just can't
Yeah.
walk off the street and say, "Hey, this is what I got going on," right?
But was
That's
there ever people in the crew that were like suspicious of you? Like,
well, I didn't
I
look
don't
like
trust
this.
that guy.
Yeah, you always gonna have. I'll be honest. I never had anybody say because obviously I had a big beard, had really long hair. I didn't sound like this. I spoke with broken English. My English is a little broken. I'm sorry, but let me explain to you what's going on. Y todo así. And I spoke Spanish. So you deal with any kind of crew. That's what I dealt with. You name the group from Hispanics to blacks to Anglos. You name it. I dealt with whoever because I said this guy's been in the country 10 years. He came from Cuba. All right. There's no way in
Yeah.
hell it could be a fucking agent, right? Little they know, it's like, yeah, no, that's part of the craft, right? That's part of the craft where you learn, you develop stuff like that, which I found it fascinating. Because again, I never thought about stuff until I got with ATF and started seeing how things were working. I said, man, this is cool, and I became, I think,
Your
pretty good at it.
So like your first day going out there undercover, what's that like?
It's a little
Your
nervous, yeah.
first day stepping out into the
Yeah,
field,
my
like
first UC deal, it's overwhelming. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on. I remember that was in the projects in Tampa, and I was had a CI, and I was already buying some dope, and I was going to do a reverse. These guys were gang members in the hood, and they were looking for guns, right? And they're going to pay me with crack cocaine. So these are cases you cut your teeth on, right? But they're dangerous because you
yeah.
never know how stuff goes bad and stuff like that. So
But you're not gonna sell them the guns with bullets in them, right?
no, no, the guns are empty, but that magazine. But we're taking them down. It's a bust. So
Yeah, it's like
once he gives
yeah,
me the dope, right? I give him the guns, and I give the signal to take these guys down.
yeah. You don't give them enough time to like load the guns and
No, you don't want you want to take them down as soon as you can. But and those kind of cases make you nervous. I mean, when you learn, but you have to do a lot of the stuff to get practice and good at it. But yeah, was the first few times, yeah, you're like, man, anything go wrong, and that's the early, and then you get more and more comfortable with it. The more you're doing, like you do years of it, and you do, and especially when you start doing with more mid-level players, even it can always be dangerous, but they tend to not want to rip because they see the potential, what you have, what you offer. Hey, listen, I'm an international trafficker. I'm tied with these guys. I'm looking to buy a lot of these guns. A lot of these guns won't stay in the area. Ba, 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 ba. And they deal with you, and they deal, and they feel comfortable. Hey, this guy is a businessman. He's serious. Hey, I'm a serious guy. You're a serious guy, right? We're going to do business this way, and things go well. They know I'm always, and I try always to be on time and not to yank their chain, right? We agree at one time. I always want to be there because that's how relationships start deteriorating quickly. Plus, I
yeah.
got a cover team and I got a lot of things to do, and I got to make sure things go right. So there's a lot of factors in there. And I wasn't, I was one of these undercovers. I couldn't be gone. Sometimes guys would take off like to other parts of the states, like let's say in Florida or California, gone 5 6 months. I couldn't do that. I had two young daughters when I was
Yeah.
working a lot of undercover work. So what I did is I worked a lot local stuff where I I'm in the area, my field division, and I was also the case agent, right? So now I'm the undercover. I'm running the investigation. I'm dealing with the evidence. I was also the vault custodian, and also did my own intel workups. So ATF is a smaller agency than FBI and DEA. I mean, they're a lot bigger than us. So
Yeah.
you have to wear many hats, and I'm also good at multitasking. So I was good at doing all that. So you got to do the briefings, operations. So then the case has its own complexities. I mean, I'm not just doing the buys and the reports. I'm doing the phone tolls. I'm doing the stuff, doing with the prosecutor, preparing the recording. It's a lot. It keeps you busy.
Yeah.
It's a busy, busy, busy. So I appreciate you having the show here. I'm talking a little bit about this. So
Were you nervous ever that you're gonna be out with your wife or something and come across some of these people that you had dealings with?
you think of that back of your head, but I lived very far away from where I was doing a lot of the undercover stuff. So I made sure I had a lot of distance. And where I lived, these kind of people wouldn't come down there because it's just too far away. So that's important. I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to be doing undercover in the same community that I was. No, I wouldn't be doing that. No, I
Yeah.
lived a big distance away, so you wouldn't come across these guys at all. So that's important to also keep that in mind. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
is there any stories that stick out to you when you did your undercover work with some of these characters that you met?
yeah, yeah. There's quite a few. I dealt with one guy. And like I said, we deal a lot with these guys who are like repeat violent offenders, which I did. And this guy was a Cuban guy, and and I'll give a little background about him first, and then I'll tell you what I did about him. He was involved in attempted murder on law enforcement back in the early 80s, 1980, right? He was in a shootout in the city of Miami, and he almost got both of these police officers killed because they're chasing them, and he's able to slam the brake. He's driving the car. He has a passenger also shooting rounds and going back and forth. The officer slammed the brake, and the doors open up on them. And because it's so hard, they fall in the vehicle. He then positions the vehicle a certain way where the guys in the passenger can shoot at him. Thank goodness they didn't kill him, and they were able to catch these guys a few blocks later, which was good. Now, and he
Wow.
was also arrested before for attempted murder, doing a robbery in, I think, in Tampa. So this guy should never been out, right? So you fast forward, he gets about 20 some years. So now this happens in 1980. You fast forward now to 2010, right? I get a call. I've been dealing with this guy, this up in Pasco, and he's saying, "Hey, listen, bro, we got some guns here, about 16 of them, but they need to move." And I said, "Oh yeah, and I already bought dope and guns from this other guy, and he has a good criminal history, right?" And
Yeah.
he transferred the phone, and he introduced me as Chino. And he said, "Hey, Chino, what's going on?" We start speaking Spanish. He says, "These guns are really hot, but they need to move quickly." I said, "What do you got?" And he tells me all the different calibers, the rifles or shotguns, etc. I said, "Okay." We start negotiating prices. All right. So we agreed on a price. I said, "Well, give me a few days, and you can meet me back in my apartment." I had an undercover apartment that was wired for for video and sound and
Yeah, with
everything.
cameras, everything.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything over the whole 9 yards. So it's perfect because what you want to do is you want to get that perfect recording. So if you can, like a movie for the jury, right, and for the prosecutor, so the
Yeah.
jury feels good when they come with a verdict. It's almost like a movie. You see them, you
You
hear
kind of
everything.
you make the whole apartment look like it's really your apartment, right?
It's
You
an
put
apartment.
clothes in there.
Everything. I even had a refrigerator full of food. I had beer
Yeah.
in there. I had it all looking good. We had furniture, the whole 9 yards. You have to make it look and roll, and it's a place where I do business. I got other places, and it worked good because they come in. I said, okay, no problem. The other guy knew where it was because I already dealt with him before, the first guy. So he's
Mhm.
bringing out this other guy, which before I met with him, I talked to the detective from Pasco County, which I worked a lot with, and I said, "Hey, listen, they said they had 16 guns. Do you guys have a reported robbery of a recently?" He goes, "Oh yeah, we did," and it was about the same amount. And I said, I described how the guy was. He's Cuban. It sounds like this, and he sounds like he's an older guy. And he goes, "Oh, that might be this guy." So he shows me a picture of him. It fits the profile. I was like, "Okay, I'll keep that in mind."
Yeah.
And the guys they robbed from, I mean, they had an active window company, right? They worked on fixing windows, but if they thought the house was empty, so you always got to be careful. When you see a van parked in someone's house, you don't know if they really are. So they would pretend to work in the back. They would come in through the back and clean house and take stuff inside the van. So
Yeah.
sometimes they're working on windows, sometimes they're cleaning out your house. And that's what these
Yeah,
guys did
they
here.
they make it seem like they're workers and go to your house, right?
Yeah, yeah. So always be careful
Yeah.
when you're out there and you see a van parked in front of your house or in a driveway or someone neighbor's house. Just always keep an eye, see if they're really working there, if they're doing something else. Because now it's changed a little bit more. People have more cameras, right?
Yeah, the
You could
Ring
have,
doorbell camera is it was
yeah,
a pretty genius idea for
yeah,
local people.
yeah, that and have cameras around your house. There's so much more you can do. Motion detectors, right? You get
Yeah.
notified. Things happen. It's like there's so much we have nowadays that 10 years ago we didn't have, and people really and back in that area, a little more rural, people may even have all that too, so they can get away with stuff like that. So this is the kind of guys you're dealing with. So this guy never learned, right? He almost got 30 years for killing two law, and then he's back at the game again. He's robbing and stealing, and this was a prominent member of the county. He worked with the sheriff's office a lot, so it shows that
Really? So
yeah,
so he's like a regular person kinda, and he's doing all these crimes?
not him, but the victim.
Or
The victims were the
oh,
victim they stole the guns from. They were a victim. They were he was a prominent member of the community, which they victimized. So they don't care. They'll come in there. They see
yeah,
nice things. They'll take everything. Your jewelry. They'll take your guns. They take anything they can carry out with them. Put them in the van. They would
yeah,
take it out. So I said okay. So now I have an idea. I already know who the first guy is because I dealt with him, and we already have enough buys and dope guns, and he's looking at a good amount of time. Now I know this guy's background. I said I got to be careful. This guy almost killed two law enforcement guys, so I have to be really careful. It's just me and these two guys.
Yeah,
So we
because if he
agree
finds out that you're
it's game on.
undercover,
Yeah, then it's and I'm always carrying a firearm also. But you don't want that situation. You got yourself, the cover team. I got my cover team listening on. It can get ugly. So they show up in two vehicles. They know where I'm at the house because he's been there before. One in the truck, and I see this huge dresser in the back of the truck, and the other guy brings a dolly. And he says, "What's in the dresser?" I said, "All the guns are in the dresser." I said, "Really? All right, let's ingenious. So let's bring in the apartment." So they put it in the dresser. They put it inside, and they had sealed the tops of the dresser, right? And they're taking the drawers out so they can stuff all the guns in there. So if you just looked at it, they were stopped by police or anybody, you would think, oh, it's just a dresser, no big deal.
yeah.
No, maybe full of clothes or something, right? So they had to conceal that. With these guys are always thinking. That's how they're thinking. They're thinking. So they pop out. They put the dolly, put everything aside. They top the dresser drawers off, and they start taking the guns out. Remember, this guy is a career criminal. So he starts giving me the guns. I'm start looking. Remember, I got all the audio and video on it, so that's good evidence right there.
Oh, because
So
it's the apartment. He brought the dresser to your apartment.
inside, yeah, they even brought a dolly.
Here, bring it right in here, boys. Right in the
Come on
camera's
in. Come
view.
on in. So guys like to boast and brag, man, and he will boast and brag like when so. After all the guns are out, take all the 16. He hands them all to me. We're taking a look at. You have the cameras and all that. I said, okay. They take the dresser back in the truck, and he said, okay, let me talk to this guy. So they come back in. And they want to start, bullshitting with me. So they sit down, and he starts telling me his whole story about Miami. What happened? And I said, okay, keep on talking. He said, man, they tried to kill me. They shot at me. They couldn't kill me. I had to shoot back at them. Like he's bragging how bad he is and stuff. And he said, listen, I can do this all day with you. If you guys want to keep on doing this, not a problem. You let me know. I'll get you more guns. So it's like, all right, that's fine. Keep on talking. The other guys are fine. We ended the conversation. He headed out. And after we took him down a few weeks later, he ended up getting, he had state charges pending. So he got sent on a state case. At the time, he was maybe middle 50s, maybe 56, 57. He ended up
Yeah.
getting 30 years federal time, pretty much
So
a life
do you
sentence.
do you have to just do you have to do your state time first and then do your federal time, or does it work
So, no,
opposite?
sometimes you do your state time first. It all depends. Most of the time, you do your state time first. They put a detainer on you, and then once you're
Yeah.
done, then the marshals come, they take you, and that's
And then you do your the
and then
Fed
you go
time.
to you go your penitentiary. You go to Bureau of Prisons, and then it's on, and it's pretty much a life sentence for the guy because I mean I don't think he'll make it into his late 90s. So
No,
especially with all the
probably
health.
not.
I don't even know if he's still alive. To be honest with you, he might already passed because it's COVID and everything else. It's amazing how many people in prisons and jails didn't do well with COVID.
Yeah, they're
So
just taking bodies out, right? Pulling them
bodies,
up.
that's
Hey,
it.
I mean, they're blaming a lot of people's deaths on COVID. When people, guy got stabbed 80 times, he died from COVID. you know,
Yeah, yeah. So
they try to hike the numbers up a little bit, I think.
yeah, so those are interesting cases. I mean, also dealing with, and it's just not about. So I don't know if you can see my poster behind me on my shoulder. Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ATF Undercover. That's the title of my autobiography. So it's not just about buying dope and guns in bad areas with bad people. It's also about my life, and it's also about waste, fraud, and abuse with ATF. So I
yeah,
tell some pretty interesting stories about I always said this, and this is a motto I've said for years. The bad guys are the easy part for me. The hard part was dealing with bad management, bad supervisors, and poor prosecutors. Because nothing's worse because you put this great case together and it falls apart because you're a bad supervisor or really bad prosecutor.
yeah.
That is
And you
demoralizing
did all this work for nothing, basically.
for nothing. And I was fortunate enough to have a good track record and I overcame. But we have instances where you put this case together and the prosecutor doesn't want to budge, doesn't want to move on it. That is the worst feeling. So I talk a lot about that stuff in there, and I also talk about solutions. To some of the problems we have with firearms trafficking and active shooters too. I wrote a book that was called the worst mass shootings in U.S. history and how we can stop them from happening again. I don't
What
know.
do
Have
you
you
think
seen
the
it?
answer is? What do you think the answer is for that?
Yeah, I've got quite a few answers in there. I don't know if did you see the video that's heartbreaking that happened in Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary? The 77 minutes that's famous now for them, the officers not going in. I mean,
Yeah,
these kids were getting slaughtered, right? And I'm law enforcement, right? And it's heartbreaking. Active shooter training is you're trained to go in there and stop them because kids are
Put
bleeding
your
out
life on the line, not wait for a whole
for the
bunch
SWAT
of
team.
people to come.
Not
Yeah,
you can't
like
wait for the SWAT team. I mean, and these guys had they had their vests, they had long guns. I know a guy has a AR-15 style rifle, and it may not be fair. You might think it's, but you know what? Those kids and those teachers had nothing, right?
yeah,
They had
yeah.
nothing. They died. It's heartbreaking. So some of the solutions I talked about is obviously a lot of these schools don't have good security, good resource officers. So you need to get the police more involved there. But you need police that are gonna do something, because if you're gonna do wait 77 minutes, that's no good.
No.
So I mentioned a solution where, remember after 9/11, where after the planes were used and used to attack us during the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon, and the pilots later were armed, right? They were given the
Yeah,
option to arm and protect the cockpit and the passenger on the plane, right? And they fortified the cockpit. Remember how they had the
yeah,
flimsy little doors back in the 70s and 80s was a joke. You pretty much push your hand through it. Then they
yeah,
fortified everything. Well, we might have to do the same thing with schools and give the teachers, those who have military background, law enforcement background, or those who are gun enthusiasts, right, the
yeah.
opportunity
The
to arm themselves too, and have that, because if they're not going to save them, you got to protect yourself and your family. I've always said this, Bill, is if you got home invaders coming in your house, don't expect the police to come and save you. You better be well armed and protect you and your family from home invaders and everybody else coming in.
well, I'm a felon. I can't carry a gun, so I
Right.
uh I gotta run to the kitchen and grab a butcher knife or something.
Right. Or get a good alarm system, or something, right? And do something, because you need your weapons to defend yourself, because if not, these bad people, like we see. I mean, and I also said we have a mental health crisis in this country
I think so. I think there's a major mental health crisis.
that's triggered with domestic violence, and it's triggered with many other factors, because a lot of these guys, I mean, it's the same thing. And this guy Ramirez, Ramos, in Uvalde, Texas, he shot the grandmother first, right? He shoots her first. I mean, he gets these guns, and then he goes to the elementary school to kill these kids. I mean, he murders 19 of them and kills the teacher. And I heard the first teacher he shoots walks in the door, he points a rifle and says good night, and kills her. And then one of the poor kids in there, all huddling, crying, and says, "I don't want to be here." Well, sorry, this is how it's going to end for all of you. And then he starts doing all the House of Horrors they were doing. So I
It's
think
insane.
if some of the teachers are armed, and most of the teachers, I think, because I document about 17 of these mass shootings, right? And they all have something in common. And what happens, sometimes you need those who are ready to arm and do something, right? Because if you sit there and, like them, 77 minutes, that's no good either. And that's not the first time that's happened, that sometimes law enforcement doesn't go in there. In Parkland, in South Florida, you have the sheriff's office there, and they were outside while the teachers are trying to combat and fight the shooter, and they're getting killed, and they have no weapons, right? You can't
Yeah,
stay outside.
Connecticut, the Cheshire incident, the cops
Sandy
just
Hook.
stayed outside and the guy had time. He killed the women in the house and it was just too late. And
How
the guy
heartbreaking! How heartbreaking is Sandy Hook? Huh?
yeah, I'm
That's another
from
one.
Connecticut. I live in Connecticut and it was
Mm.
terrible. It's a really sad situation. I went to prison in Newtown. I was in that prison
Whoa, wow!
next to Sandy Hook. It's in the same vicinity.
And it's the same thing. People say, well, we need stricter gun laws. No, because when you have gun-free zones, strict gun laws, criminals, they don't follow any
Yeah,
laws.
they don't follow the law. They'll just go out and get a gun. They don't care about the laws.
Now
Like
the street
stricter
market.
gun laws are going to make it harder for the people that are going to protect you to get a gun.
That's right. To
I
defend
think they
yourself.
need mental health, mental health. Maybe they go through some type of training or something where you could tell if the person's mentally not equipped to carry a firearm.
Yeah. And the thing is, just like anywhere else, there's always a loophole. There's a workaround, right? So a person knows he's not right. They know they're off, right? And they know they're gonna have issues going through filling in, because you have to go to a gun store and what they call an FFL, a federal firearms licensee, right? You got to fill the background check. You got to fill out the form, and they think maybe they're not going to pass all that. And there's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's very
Yeah.
easy to go online, right? and you go to one of these and you say, hey, some private sale, I'll meet you at the parking lot or wherever, they'll sell you the gun. As long as you're a resident of the state, sometimes you look, it's very simple and sad and crazy. You go to gun shows, flea markets, no backgrounds. There's no backgrounds. People are just
Yeah,
private
I'm a
sales.
felon. I could get a gun if I wanted to, but I'm not that type of I'm not in that type of world anymore. I don't
Right,
live that type of way.
and that's
And
how you become a repeat offender, right? And then all
yeah.
of a sudden, this time, these might be strike three for you, right? And
Well,
this
I am
time,
a repeat offender. I got arrested 26 times in my
wow.
criminal history, but I've
Let me ask you this: and I asked him, how did you stop and not continue in the cycle? How did you get off
I
that?
stopped drinking and I stopped drugs and I got sober and that's where my life changed. And it stopped everything. It stopped me getting arrested. It stopped all the negative things in my life.
Well, that's great. That's big. Yeah, drug addiction is a big problem in this country. There's no
Almost 4
doubt about
years. I got almost 4 years and I wouldn't change it for anything.
it. Yeah, you've been sober 4 years. That's great, man. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your
September
rehabilitation.
14th,
Keep it up.
2019.
I've been doing this is something new to me because so people ask me, how did I get involved in writing books and podcast shows now and being YouTube and all that? Because a year ago, I was still with ATF. I was, like I said, undercover for years. I had promoted at the end because I was in Miami, and I went to ATF headquarters. I was a program manager, and I was working with the command staff, a major operations and projects that were going on. And I just retired, like I said, less about a year now, and I started writing. I started dabbling a little bit on my autobiography, ATF Undercover. The acting director at the time, back in March 2020, remember how bad things were? Everybody's working from home. We have no vaccine. We had no
Yeah.
idea where this was going. So he said, people are very anxious, very nervous, right? No one knew people were dying left and right. He said, I'm healthy, but you're still seeing healthy people getting really sick. What's going on here? So he said, maybe do something, take your mind off it, maybe start writing or doing something to challenge yourself. So I took that and I started writing and I started dabbling because I had a lot of work. So I started, and then I had to work on it some more. Retired in 2021, summer 2021. And I saw the Beijing Games coming, right? I said, how can communist China, with all the human rights abuses, atrocities, and what's going on, be hosting their second games? Uh, and Beijing having their winter and summer games. So I wrote all my books are short books. I've done almost 41 books now, Bill. 41
What?
books, 6 in 6 months. They're short reads, and my autobiography is the longest. And then right now, I'm working one on the one percenters on Sonny Barger, who just passed away, the head of
Yeah.
the Hells Angels. And I'm really getting some good detail story. That should be coming out in about a week or so. Coming out, so I'll have your audience look out for that one. It's called Full Throttle: the life of Sonny Barger. Barger. So I started political. I already started with politics because my background like I said, I had a political science degree, history major. I also started working international relations. So, and I was with customs. So I really been following politics since I can remember. And my family was also very political too. They're very anti-Castro, and they came to South Florida. So I wrote. It was called "The Evil Empire, Communist China: Why They Should Never Host Another Olympic Games Again." And I really made the case against the Communist Chinese Party of the atrocities against ethnic Muslims, against the Tibetans, against anybody who's pro freedom. If you're not, I almost compare them to the ultimate mob boss because Xi Jinping, it's all about control. If you're not about the way I want to do things, then it's going to end up badly three ways. Either you're going to be incarcerated, you're going to disappear, or it's going to be death, right?
Yeah.
So that's how they run things. It's like a mob boss. You
Yeah,
control.
if you go
Oh,
against them at all, they'll just wipe you out, like
yeah. It's like Putin, right?
erase your whole family, right?
It's like Putin. The same
Yeah.
thing with Putin right now. He does the same thing. Look what he's doing in Ukraine and with these people. He's the ultimate mob boss. Or
How are
Fidel
they
Castro.
letting him do this? How are they letting him continue?
Putin,
Yeah.
he controls the military, and if you control the military and control the police, they can still go along with him as long they need somebody, um, either within the dissidents or somebody. Hopefully, he gets removed. But
Isn't the US the world police, right? How come we don't go in there, just slap them out of there?
he has nuclear weapons. That's a problem. What's the difference between Russia and China? Is that they have nuclear weapons. They can hurt us. We annihilate them, but they have nuclear submarines,
Yeah,
right?
but we could take them out before all that
We,
comes to
we can take
there.
them out too, but I don't think we want to lose like a million, 2 million people in this country, and then
Yeah,
say,
I agree.
it's still going to get a few in, no matter if we have a good defense system, and they have nuclear submarines, the Chinese and the Russians, and they're kind of joining forces, very similar to what happened in World War II with the Nazis and the Japanese joining forces against the U.S. and our allies. These two they don't like that we're the big power, the super dog, right? They want to
Yeah,
knock us out because
yeah.
both of them are very corrupt regimes, very corrupt. They don't have the democratic institutions that we have in our country. So it's very bad. And I feel really bad for the Ukrainian people. I wrote a book about Putin's tyranny. I also wrote another one called the Battle for Ukraine, Freedom versus Tyranny, the Battle for Ukraine. And I go in depth against why Putin, he's invaded Ukraine since 2014, the Crimea area. So he's already encroached. He's been encroaching and encroaching. He was raised. He was like a communist, but he's really a capitalist who loves to have control because he has $1 billion palace near the Black Sea, $1 billion palace. If your audience wants to take a look at that, Putin's palace, you can see how lavish, how
I'll
crazy.
put pictures. I'll put pictures of it
Yeah.
together with this video. I'm gonna put a lot of pictures on this video.
Oh, good. Yeah, Putin's
Yeah, it'll
palace.
be
Check that out, man. That's you have a chance. Dissident put it together, and it's just unbelievable what it's worth, the size of it. They have a hockey ring, underground hockey ring. They have. I mean, it's just it's just disgusting. And he claims that, it's not really his. It belongs to other these oligarchs. But of course, everything in Russia pretty much is his now.
yeah, of course. So when you were undercover, was
Yeah,
there is there any times where you were nervous that your identity would be exposed?
they would be exposed. I, you deal with some of these guys long enough, you feel like if they do, because they're still dealing with you, right? If they
Yeah,
felt like they were cut off, but because they're not getting arrested and they like the money, right? They
they
keep on
keep
dealing with you.
going, right?
They keep
That's
going.
what it is. They
They-
they test the waters and check and see if it's like, oh, are they gonna arrest me? And then they don't, and they keep going with it, right?
He said, okay. I mean, we're doing this. I mean, other people and buying and dope and guns, and they keep on. I never had anybody say to me, "Oh, you're a cop. I'm not going to deal with you anymore." Afterwards, some of these guys like to say after they've been arrested, "Oh, I knew you were a cop. I knew you're." But then if you did, why would you be dealing with me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that's something they say. So writing the books, I really enjoyed it. So I started, and then I started. I have a niche for organized crime, right? Because I have a lot of background. I've done the gang cases. I've been part of some of these 1%er cases. I've understand the Hispanic gangs, the MS-13s, the drug cartels. And one thing I noticed and I wrote, La Cosa Nostra book, the most dangerous crime families in America, which has to do with Italian families. Pretty much every crime syndicate I've written about, from the 1%ers to the cartels to even Yakuza, which is pretty fascinating. If you want to know a little bit about Japanese mafia, I wrote a book about Yakuza Japanese mafia, which is interesting. And again, these are short books, but they're very
Yeah.
informative. So if you don't know something about, and not just organized crime, but like politics. I did a book on Joe Biden, called Joe Biden One and Done. And my prediction,
You're just doing books on everything, man.
everything, man, everything.
Like every topic you could think of.
Travel books. Also my travels. I've taken
Yeah.
pictures on travels too. So if you like to see cool cities, and I've taken cool pictures, I put pictures together, travel books. Well, I even did a few books with my daughters, kids books, because she collaborated with me with ideas. She's a big dancer, so I even did some kids books too. So
That's
I have a
cool.
little bit, yeah, yeah, good family
I'm
values.
gonna get into doing a book.
You
I'm gonna
should,
work on one, yeah.
you
Definitely.
should.
There's some people who discourage
Mm,
doing a book, but I think it's a good way to have your have your legacy
I
move
agree.
on and live on even
That's
when you're
true.
gone. Your book will be there, people will be able to read it, and it's just an extension of you kind of, right?
It's very therapeutic. I'm going to say that. When I wrote
Yeah.
my autobiography, it's also nice to put everything out there and talk about it. I agree about that because I got over 40 books and counting. Like I said, they're going to be there. That's
In
that's
how
going to be
long?
out there
6 months, you said? 6
in
months,
six
right?
months. 6 months. Now, they're not like I said.
Wow.
They're not super long reads, but they're good reads, short read, but very detailed. And I'm very good at researching and open source and going and putting good information in there. So if you don't know a lot about a certain topic, I think you'll like my books. And I think so. All right, so I started writing a lot, and a lot of people started noticing my work too, right? So a lot of these shows, when I post on Facebook or whatever media platform, they look at my books and say, hey, that's pretty good, man. Hey, well, you want to come on my show? So I started doing some of these shows, and all of a sudden, it really started picking up. I might be doing a TV show in a few weeks out of London. I just finished doing a podcast show. Now it's more. I know the term. I guess these are podcast slash video shows, right? Because they're both
Yeah.
like yours.
Yeah.
So I learned some different terms here. I was saying podcast. No, but I do also videos,
Kind of
YouTube
like a
show.
video
It's
podcast,
a
a
video, right?
vlog.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what you would call it. Just
Yeah.
I don't know. Interviews.
I don't know. So
Video
somebody said, no,
interviews.
so podcast only for interviews or audio only, but this is both video and audio. So I started doing both the video and audio shows a lot. I haven't done just the audio shows. I just did one 2.5 hours. I did one in Australia, and
Yeah.
I've become popular out there. Yeah, great
It's
show. You'll
awesome.
see it.
Yeah. You can be in all types of parts of the world. I have people who watch my show
Yes,
in London, in
yes,
Australia, all over the
yes,
place.
yes, yes. And I got some from India too. They want to interview me too. So it's it's phenomenal. So I
It's
started just an
awesome.
idea of writing books to right now this, and I'm trying to push it to another level with my autobiography because I have some interest. Get a screenplay going on with that, so that might get picked up too. So we'll see,
Yeah,
we'll see,
that would
man.
be awesome.
Yeah. So
What are some of the Italian mob guys you dealt with down in Florida?
I never dealt with specifically time up because by the time, and this I put in my book, Italian mafia is nothing what it used to be. Obviously, right?
Yeah,
It's pretty much done. It's been devastated with federal racketeering cases. Guys who used to not cooperate, everybody started cooperating against each other. So it's really nothing what it used to be at all. Just like the one percenters, of violent biker groups, they've been decimated also with huge federal racketeering cases. Once
yeah,
RICO racketeering case started coming around, it really hurt them. But the groups that I mentioned before in my books, I mentioned LA gang wars, and I mentioned other ones about gangs, prison gangs, is that the street gangs are still flourishing. No matter how big the cases are, they're still growing. They're still getting bigger. Just like the cartels. The Mexican cartels is probably the strongest I've ever seen it. I mean, they've taken over, and obviously in Mexico, you have the Sinaloa and Jalisco as the two top ones, and you have the other ones around there. And Chapo is in Supermax, but you have other people that pick up soon after. So
yeah.
and they keep on growing. They're over Central America, South America. They picked up where the Colombian cartels have fallen. They're there, and they're brutal. They're violent. Maybe the Gambino family they were saying I was reading made at its peak, maybe $500 million a year. Maybe these guys are making billions. I think the Mexican government said between 12, 15 billion a year. That's one syndicate.
Insane.
That's one
Can you
syndicate.
imagine? Like they can't even spend all that money in a
That,
lifetime.
that that's why they buy everybody, and that's why the corruption is so bad in Mexico, and that's why I keep on saying that Mexico has some strict gun laws, right? Strict gun laws, but the cartels have everything they want. They have everything.
Yeah,
50 cal Barretts, assault right, you name it, of missile launchers, they have it because they buy and everything's corrupted. They own the police, they buy the police, and if you don't go along with the program, you know what happens? They end up kidnapping you and your whole family and doing bad things to you,
yeah.
dismembering, horrors, decapitations, bad things, and they leave signs
Hanging
on
you
your
from a
body.
bridge. Yeah,
Yeah, the signs on your body says this is what happens when police enforce the laws in this town. CJNG, that's the Jalisco New Generation cartel. So I mean that's a bad situation over there. So that's why people said, hey, we need stricter gun laws, gun-free zones. No, that means you get victimized more, and people are going to take advantage of you. I mean, look at the subway system in New York City. I mean, you live up in blue states in the Northeast. You know how strict they are, but yet it's just bad news. It's just that the criminal elements getting stronger because people
seems
end
like
up.
everyone's carrying a gun now.
You have
Everybody
to.
carries a gun. Everybody.
Yeah, because bad guys are not going to stop because bad guys are bad guys, right? That's their culture. That's their environment. They don't work. They need to feed. They need to do something. And you see you have a nice watch. They see you may have something, and you're not allowed to carry on the subway system. Ooh, maybe this is a chance to take advantage of this situation here, right?
Well,
So
hopefully the tides start to change,
yeah,
and hope all we can do is hope, right?
yeah.
But definitely, I'm really intrigued by your story, man, and I want to have you back on.
Oh, great.
I want to get some more information out of you. We'll set it up. I'll get you back on,
Sounds good, Bill.
and
If your audience wants me back on the, I mean, if you're looking for my books, you just go on Amazon, right?
yeah,
You can see my author page. Just type in my name. Like if you buy anything, you put Ignacio, IGNACIO. You see it right there. Esteban, ESTEBAN, and you can see all my books or 40 books. My autobiography is
I'll put
good.
a
It's getting
link.
good.
I'll put a link for
Okay.
your the description in the description for your books,
Okay.
and
Sounds good,
you'll
Bill.
be able to click on it and go right to it. So go check out his books, and I'll definitely have you on again. I know the people are gonna want you back on so you can tell some more of them stories.
For sure, man.
Um, Thank you for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. Is there
No
anyone you
problem.
want to give a shout out to before we go?
Everything's good. I'm very fortunate and happy, working hard, enjoying retirement, spend time with my family, get to do my hobbies, and then I get to do other things and meet interesting people around on these shows. So life is good.
Definitely, man. Thank you again. And shout out to Bill Crooks for making this possible. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. Till next time. Thanks again, man.